Imagine walking through a quiet village where the clocks stopped in 1944 and nothing has moved since. In the summer of that year, as World War II raged across Europe, a small French village named Oradour-sur-Glane lived in relative calm. Unlike many places caught in the chaos of war, Oradour had remained largely untouched. Its people, farmers, shopkeepers, families, continued their daily routines, hoping the conflict would pass them by. But history had other plans. On June 10, 1944, just days after the D-Day landings, a unit of the German Waffen-SS division, known as the Das Reich Division, entered the village. Their presence was not entirely unexpected. German forces were moving through the region. But what happened next would become one of the most shocking atrocities in Western Europe during the war. The soldiers ordered all residents to gather in the village square. There was confusion, but little resistance. People assumed it was a routine identity check or security measure, something that had happened before in occupied France. They were wrong. The men were separated from the women and children. The men were taken to various barns and sheds around the village. The women and children were locked inside the church. Then, without warning, the violence began. Gunfire echoed through the barns as soldiers opened fire on the men. Those who survived the initial shots were trapped as the buildings were set on fire. Smoke and flames consumed everything.
At the church, the situation was even more horrifying. An explosive device was detonated inside, filling the space with smoke and panic. As people tried to escape, soldiers fired at anyone who attempted to flee. The church was then set ablaze, trapping hundreds inside. By the end of the day, 642 people had been killed. The village was systematically destroyed. Homes were burned, shops were looted, vehicles were left abandoned in the streets. What remained was not just destruction, but silence. News of the massacre spread slowly, and when it did, it shocked the world. Even in a war filled with brutality, what happened in Oradour-sur-Glane stood out for its scale and senselessness. After the war, France faced a difficult decision: rebuild the village or preserve it. They chose to remember. Instead of reconstructing Oradour, the French government decided to leave the ruins exactly as they were. A new village was built nearby, but the original site was left untouched, a frozen moment in time. Today, walking through Oradour-sur-Glane feels like stepping into history itself. Rusting cars still sit where they were left, sewing machines remain on tables, burned-out buildings stand open to the sky. Streets are lined with empty shells of homes, their walls blackened by fire. There are no voices, no movement, only the weight of what happened. Visitors from around the world come to see the village, not as a tourist attraction, but as a place of remembrance. It serves as a powerful reminder of the human cost of war and the consequences of hatred and violence. Historians have long debated why Oradour was targeted. Some theories suggest it was a case of mistaken identity, with German forces confusing it with another village linked to resistance fighters. Others believe it was intended as a warning to discourage resistance activity in the region. Whatever the reason, the result was the same: an entire community erased in a single day. For American audiences, the story of Oradour-sur-Glane offers a perspective on World War II that goes beyond battlefields and military strategy. It highlights the experiences of civilians, the ordinary people who found themselves caught in extraordinary circumstances. It is easy to think of history in terms of dates and events, but places like Oradour remind us that history is also made of lives, individual stories, families, and communities. In the decades since the war, efforts have been made to preserve the site and educate future generations. Memorial centers provide context and historical information, helping visitors understand not just what happened, but why it matters. Because memory is fragile, and without places like Oradour-sur-Glane, stories like this risk being forgotten. Standing in the ruins, you begin to notice the details. A child's toy left behind, a bicycle leaning against a wall, a doorway that leads nowhere. Each object tells a story that was never finished. More than 80 years have passed since that day in 1944. The world has changed, technology has advanced, nations have rebuilt. But the village remains the same, a silent witness to one of history's darkest moments. And a reminder that even in times of war, the greatest losses are often the ones that never make headlines: the lives interrupted, the voices silenced, and the places that time chose not to heal. Because some places are not meant to be rebuilt. They are meant to be remembered.